everybody. Welcome to Save the Arts and Culture with Melanie. Tonight, I am lucky enough to have Mr. Scott Matalon here with me, who is an artist, an entrepreneur, an author, and a civic activist in his area. And you can tell him all about your neighborhood, Scott, because that's where it all began. The full circle, right?
That's right. Thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here, and it's nice to see you.
I know, and you got it's so exciting. Scott wrote an awesome 410-page book on his life, and it's based around his work. And I heard a little rumor, Scott, tell me if I'm right or wrong, that there's being a little film in the works about you. So if that's happening, he's got to be pretty interesting. So show us what you got, Scott. You're pretty interesting.
Well, thank you. I grew up, as a little kid, I was an artist. I became a musician. I joined band and did all of that. But all I really wanted to be was a rock and roller. I wanted to sing
Oh,
and play.
wait, I heard that you were a trombone major at New England Conservatory. That's a little cool side bit of
Yeah, yeah,
information that you wouldn't expect.
yeah.
Before he starts going, there's so many side things about him that you would not expect, that you got to make sure you get those little stories in, Scott, as you can, because I learn something new about you every single day. I did not know until yesterday, everybody, that he loves archery, and he's apparently really good at it, right? So between volunteering, giving music classes and archery, and doing tattoos and performances and making a statement in his neighborhood, which is Alston, which is right outside of Boston. I don't know. When do you sleep, dude?
I'm kind of a night owl, so I go to bed
Yeah.
as the sun's rising.
Really?
Oh yeah, oh
Are
yeah.
you one of those guys who can get away with like 4 or 5 hours of sleep?
For a few days, then I pass out.
Yeah.
I have to recharge. You
I
know.
hear ya. Okay, so we're fascinated. I'm fascinated, and I'm sure everybody else watching this is going to be too.
So,
Go.
I didn't really know anything about jazz, and I got into New England Conservatory of Music as a jazz trombonist. And my goal was really to learn about music because, when you're growing up and you're watching, rock and roll, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, playing in band and getting to that point where you're playing, like you're listening to Led Zeppelin or things like that, there's this gulf of knowledge that I just didn't have. And I made a deal with my dad that I do the dual degree program with Tufts and NEC so that I could get a
Oh
music
yeah,
education.
I forgot they had that.
Yeah, yeah. I was one of the first years, so I was surrounded by all these jazz majors and started playing blues on the street and playing with street musicians, Vietnam vets, and on the blues scene, and started getting up close to real singers and guitar players, and started playing in bands until eventually I had my own band.
Cool. Like, what? Where did you start out playing other than like on the sidewalk or whatever? Did you play small
Oh,
clubs or?
yeah, yeah. I was in Little Joe Cook and the Thrillers. I was in his band at the Cantab. We used to play all over Boston. I played with, like I said, Vietnam vets on the street that took me under their wing, and they taught me a lot about playing and performing. We were thousand, different ensembles at the conservatory, and then a couple of friends of mine and we started a rock band. I got involved with other friends' bands, was writing, horn charts for them, and they were like an R&B rock kind of band. So I started getting a chance to see guitar players like really up close and singers and how these songs were constructed and made. And, it was an education. So I was spending my life, trying to get signed. And while I'm doing this, I had to make money, I had to make a living
Do
somehow.
you
And
really?
yeah, you got to pay the bills. And like a lot of musicians back then, this was the 80s, so it was long before the internet. We got involved in computers because it was a great job. Nobody knew what we did. We had long hair, and as long as the computers worked, nobody bothered us, and
Right.
they didn't, there weren't a million people with Microsoft certifications running around.
Right.
So I was writing small business software, and eventually I ended up at a company called Boston Biomedical, and I was running the whole computer department and the library, and
So that's a high
that,
tech, like a biotech company. Yeah.
they did market research in like they would study all the companies that made tests, any test that the human could get, whether it was a home pregnancy test or a cancer test or clinical chemistry, all these things, and they would
Right.
figure out who dominated the markets and the products, and they would sell these reports to these very same companies.
Okay.
So I kind of got a little bit of a business education there, but I was learning a lot about computers. And in about 1989, I guess, the military, they had this, they have their top secret network, but then they had a network that was classified that connected them to places like MIT and Lincoln Labs. They got an upgrade. They got an upgrade to the first fiber network, and the old MilNet got declassified and was made public, and it was actually called the New England Academic and Research Net up here, and it became the internet. And we were a group of people in my office building.
No,
It
I
was
did
my
not know that.
company, Polaroid, Microsoft, AI Corp. A bunch of us became the pilot group for the commercialization of the internet. This is still before the web. It was just
Wow.
internet and FTP.
I remember when Polaroid was. They were Newton.
Yeah, yeah. So this was up in Waltham, Technology Way, and I was the long hair rock and roll computer guy in the group, and we started. We learned about how this basic internet worked, and then a couple
We
years later,
will, rest assured, people, we will be showing photos of
yeah.
Scott during those
So
days. Mhm.
so
Born.
about my friends and I, on the side with our bands, we were making videos and we were making multimedia CD-ROM type stuff. And then in 93, the first web browser came out, the very first version, the beta version of Mosaic came out, and we downloaded that thing right away and started making websites for just regular people to enjoy music and art, and 3D looking rooms that you could wander through and stuff like that. And it was, so as the internet age dawned and everybody wanted to get their companies on the internet, we were the only people here in Boston who really knew how this stuff worked. And my two friends of mine and I, we started the company in my living room. We named it after our college crazy house. It was called STUMPWORLD.
What year is this about?
This is, well, I got on the internet in about 89. It was a group called PyNet. That was the pilot group. And then the first browser came out, I think it was spring of 93. So it was about 93 that we started making websites. We were doing work for digital equipment, and we started making websites and things for all the local companies. We ended up doing like Stone and Webster and Comcast, which became Xfinity. But we did a kiosk, like a touchscreen thing for Aerosmith at the Billboard 100th anniversary party, and it was just
that must have been thrilling for you.
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, their creative director gave us all sorts of videos and pictures, and this was, we made this touchscreen, and we were at the Billboard show, and a friend of mine introduced me to an agent and manager named Pamela Burton. She used to be the agent for the police, and she was the agent for REM, and
you say that so casually, Scott. I mean,
yeah, well, it was it was like we were in heaven. She shared an office with U2 and PJ Harvey, and she became our manager. She saw what we were doing, and she became our manager on the spot. And about 9 months later, we made her our business partner, and
wow.
We started landing, gigs like we made the first shopping cart on the internet. It was selling yellow pages for 9X, and then she got us the job.
Can you explain a little bit what that is? Because
well, when you go shopping online, right? You go to Amazon, you put stuff in your shopping cart, and you check out with a credit card. That was absolutely like an impossible thing to do when the web first came
Right,
out because the
right,
browser is
right, right.
so simple. So we figured out like a clever little trick to do a shopping cart and got it working. And we sold it to 9X, and then we sold it. Pamela got us a gig for Blue Note Records to sell all
Made
their
it pretty,
CDs.
I'm sure, right? You
Yeah,
know,
it was
because
the
he's such a computer genius. Like he knows how to not only make the engine
it
work,
was
but he makes things look cool.
Yeah, our thing was making websites that work. You know, they looked cool, but they actually did stuff. And that was the very first. The Blue Note Records website was the very first website that sold music on the internet. Now you had to buy, you bought it, and they mailed you a CD. Right? There was no streaming.
Yeah, I was gonna
Uh,
say. So this is not
you
like
know,
Spotify.
Right. And, one thing led to another. We started growing, getting more and more jobs. We partnered up with an agency called Artist Direct with some famous guys who had started Lollapalooza, with Perry Farrell. And we wrote, the booking touring system that managed all the world tours for Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Rage Against the Machine and the Chili Peppers and all those bands. We licensed it to CAA, so Madonna, everybody was using our software.
And
And
Ryan,
then
why don't you stop and explain who CAA is? And if you can't
creative
explain it well,
artists,
I will fill
yeah,
in.
okay. Well, bands have a manager, and the manager helps them manage their business. But when they do shows, they've only got one agent. They've got an agent, and you have to make a deal with their agent. So it doesn't matter
And
world tours or if you want a band to
there's
play at a
only a
birthday
top
party.
couple that are the most prevalent.
Well,
CAA has always
Well,
been the king.
CAA is the most powerful company in Hollywood, right?
Mhm.
They changed the movie industry in the '70s. Mike Ovitz and them, so they are the
Now
top
they're
of
getting sued, but
yeah. They've gone through a lot, but
everybody's getting sued out there. So you know,
right. And this was before the rise of Live Nation and everything. So every club or every stadium had a different person who booked that stadium. So the agents would, they would, if Aerosmith was playing, their agent would call, they could talk to the folks at the Boston Garden, and if they weren't getting the deal they wanted, they could book a show instead at Great Woods or whatever it was back then. So we were working with these agents on this, touring software. It did everything. It negotiated the deals, it did all the contracts, it gave out the itineraries, the financials, all of it. And we were getting really known as, one of the few companies who made websites that could really do stuff. And we made the Aerosmith website, and it had, there was no MailChimp or anything like that or Constant Contact. We built all these tools to mail their fans, and they could
it
put
was
a
like unheard of.
calendar dates and all this stuff. So we were making these tools for them. And then the Rolling Stones came to the agency because they wanted to do e-commerce. And you got to understand, back then, bands only sold merchandise when they were on tour, right? You could buy the t-shirt, you could buy the
Right,
poster, you could buy
right.
the program. All the t-shirts and lunch boxes, that was the record companies making deals with like Toys R Us. So the bands got
Right.
screwed out of all that money.
Yeah,
So
there's no
Stones
royalties
put
at
up,
all. It's
right,
like
a
actors, like TV
couple of,
shows made in the
yeah,
70s and 80s,
yeah,
and
yeah, they got
those
screwed.
actors have
They
no
they did
money.
it
No.
right. So this was the first major label, like major rock band that was selling merchandise, selling stuff directly to their fans. And the agency was called Artist Direct, and that was their idea, was to
Yeah,
direct from the artist to the fan. So
yeah,
we
I
built
know
the
who they
Rolling
are.
Stones. So we built the Rolling Stones web store, the Stones Bazaar, for the Bridges to Babylon tour, and I think it sold $1 million worth of merchandise in 90 days, and it just changed the music business
Yeah, and
because
though in those days,
suddenly
that's a lot of money.
back then, only people selling merch was Kiss, and everyone thought like that was selling out. So the Stones
Uh,
changed the whole playing field, and
selling
everybody
selling
started
out until they realized how much profit kids was
right,
making
and they
out of
could
that.
take control. They got it was a chance to take control of their revenue streams. Record companies.
What's your feeling on? I like again. I don't know the percentage, but every concert I go to, even with the little boys who haven't been out much, they themselves, if they don't have a big staff, they are waiting outside of the concert hall and they push on their little personal websites merch. Okay. And I'm always like, well, what percentage do they make out of that? And what kind of influence do you think that those items have on their sales? Like, how much, what's the percentage? Say you buy a t shirt for $30. How much money did they get? Or do they count it more for exposure?
That's kind of stuff depends on volume.
Yeah,
Usually, for retail, your cost of goods sold is supposed to be around 20 to 30%. And then, if you're buying a lot of stuff, you get it cheaper. But,
yeah,
it became with records over time disappearing and everything going to streaming, touring and merchandise have become the main revenue streams for a lot of musicians. You're not making money selling records. You're certainly not making money with streaming. Everyone knows that bands don't get paid crap. It's
yeah. No, I
you
know,
know,
but I find it like, uh, even the smaller bands, they put a link right at the top going like
oh yeah,
for merch, for merch, for merch, for
oh,
merch. And it's like, well,
absolutely.
I don't even know who you are. Why am I gonna? Why am I gonna
Well,
buy? I like you, but I don't
if
want
their
to.
fans like them, they think the shirt's cool looking, they'll buy it, and that's great. But at the time, this was totally groundbreaking. Everybody was freaking out in the music industry because the Stones were selling out, and they changed the playing field. So
Right, right.
you know, so our e-commerce, was getting really, really known, and we had all these tools. So we brought on, a real business manager, a guy named Michael Klebnick, and he helped us get a publishing deal with a software publisher where we published our software. It was called Online Merchant, and it was sold at Staples and CompUSA and Best Buy, and it became the number one e-commerce product in America. So we were sitting around at night talking about, we were smoking a joint, and we were talking about like, what else do these
Yeah,
merchants need?
I wore this. I wore this for Scott.
So
I
we were
bought this
talking
at a
like,
gas station in South Carolina, and I love it. I don't generally wear it out too
so
much, but
So
it's
Mike and I, we're sitting there at night in the office and we're talking about, like what else do these small merchants first getting on the internet for the first time? What else do they need? They need marketing, they might need inventory, they need order processing, they need
right.
coupon. So we decided, I said, hey, let's make a mall. Let's make an online mall. Like, remember, Amazon was only selling books
Books,
and they were
yeah,
first getting into like electronics and stuff. So
yeah.
we raised $7 million in venture capital. We probably had about 12 people at that time working for us. The company was
A lot
growing.
of money then,
Uh,
especially.
and yeah, and it was like little insular. We had a little corporate culture going, and we raised $7 million, and we built a mall called Buy It Online, and I got patents on mall-wide shopping carts, so you could shop through hundreds of merchants and load up one shopping cart and check out with one credit card process. You didn't have to do each one individually, and we got a patent on coupons for the same thing, digital online coupons.
Oh,
So
okay,
after
cool.
that, our company exploded. We became like 80 people. It was unbelievable. We were hiring entire departments. We had
You are a rock star in and of itself on the business end, and you were lucky enough to have the cred of the cool musicians too. So
yeah, and
they were like,
and
"Oh my God, he's so smart, and he works with them, like double whammy."
well, yeah, and people would come to us because like they would like you know they would say, like, we need to reach young people. Who do we hire? Well, if these are the guys who are working for Aerosmith, if these are the guys working with U2 and working with
Right?
the Stones, they must know how to reach these kids. So
Yeah, exactly.
we even designed the entire Foot Locker chain of stores for them because they're owned by Woolworths, and they knew they weren't cool enough to reach kids
No,
in the inner city, and they
no.
hired us to design their stores. So
Really, it's just
yeah, yeah.
Foot Locker
We
doesn't
did these
exist anymore,
crazy
right?
we did
Foot
all
Locker.
these we did all these crazy jobs, and the company grew and grew and grew. We had marketing departments and tech support and a call center. And it got crazy, and it got
So
kind of scary.
were you like were you like the leader in deciding who did what and
I was
How is the corporate communication stuff? Like,
I
how
was
did
the
that work?
I was the president, and I was head of development. The
Okay.
business guy that I hired, I made him the CEO so he could deal with the finances and the money and that kind of stuff. And Pamela, ended up heading up. She went from being my partner; she was still a partner. She headed up all the marketing and the marketing programs and really reaching the people.
You want to tell
Um,
people that don't really know about all those people, like about Pamela a little bit and her personality and her background, because most people wouldn't know.
one of the most, Pamela's one of the most important mentors in my life, and one of the most amazing people I've ever met. And, was one of those mentors who shares knowledge and, who believed in me. And, I wanted to be a rock star, and we ended up becoming like internet gurus and internet gods.
Right.
So that was pretty awesome.
Can you tell people like a little more about her exactly? Like most people are not gonna know the
Well,
details of that
when,
is, and this is very valid to your book. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because
he was a major player in the
yeah,
story. She's a major player in the book. And, Pamela had been an agent and a manager. When she was young, she wanted to be in the music business, but she didn't play an instrument. So she worked in the distribution arm. She got a job working in distribution at Warner Electra Atlantic, WEA, it was
so
called. We know
that's a big
it's,
deal.
now it's the Warner Music Group, right?
Yep.
So these, back then when record companies actually sent physical discs out, that was the most powerful arm of the company because they sent out the discs, they collected the money, they ran all the marketing programs, and
Right.
that's when she met Ian Copeland, who, the Police, Stuart Copeland's the drummer. You got Sing as the singer, and Andy's the guitar player, and Stuart Copeland was the drummer. His brother Ian and Pamela became partners, and they formed the agency. It was called Frontier Booking International. So the band was the Police, their agency was FBI, right?
Yeah,
And
no, can I
and
just
she
say,
made
I
a whole
love how
career.
casually he talks about these big people. It's like, oh, well, and this and that. Come on.
Yeah, at
Okay.
first you're really starstruck, and the gold records on the wall are
Yeah, no,
awesome,
I know.
and
And then you work with them and
and
you
then and
know,
then
it's,
they're people. Everyone's people, and they're
yep.
all good people.
Yeah.
And Pamela, had gone through the whole cycle in the '80s. Some of these biggest bands in the world. But what happened with the record companies in the late '80s, in the '90s, or beginning of the '90s, is they started consolidating and becoming these, like the banks and the airlines. They became these mega corporations where EMI owns, how many labels. They own EMI, they own Capitol, they own Blue Note. You got Polygram. They became these monstrous corporations. So
Mm.
the days of like an Atlantic Records, where you had guys like Ahmet Ertegun or Jerry Wexler who loved music. So they would develop
Okay.
Ray Charles. They would develop Led Zeppelin. They believed in their artists. Those days were over. It was ugly. It was all about stock prices and the quarterly reports. And Pamela knew that those days were over, and she was
Right.
looking for something new. So when she met us and she saw new media, she was probably the first person in the professional music industry who really got it, that new
Yeah.
media interactive was the new way. It was going to change
Right.
the world. And she took us on and became our manager. And like I said, we made her a partner literally like 9 months later. We made her a equity owning partner. She was our
Sounds like a
partner
keeper.
through the whole process. Oh yeah. But once we got to about 80 people and we started taking on investors and venture capital, things started getting kind of ugly. And when Bush, we had 9/11. Just before that, around 2000, the internet bubble was getting ready to burst. There was all this speculation. We got purchased by a public company out of Canada for about $70 million in stock. Like, they don't give you money; they give you stock in
Oh,
their
well,
company,
I
and
don't know.
you're not really allowed to sell it because they don't
Right.
want you to dump your shares. So I could sell a
Right.
little bit. Then 9 months later, I could sell a little bit. So I bought a house, and I bought my dad a Corvette. I bought a couple of cars. We went on. I started making some indie movies with my friends, but I became the CIO of this enormous public company that we had 400 people in 5 offices in 4 countries. We were processing literally $1 billion a year in credit card transactions. But first we had the internet stock market crash, and then 9/11 and the Bush recession. And then, they made gambling online illegal. That cut a lot of our revenues out because they were processing just the transactions,
Okay.
doing the gambling. But our stock price dropped from $20 a share to 20 cents a share. And I lost $18 million like overnight, like in a weekend,
Oh.
From Friday night to Monday morning. I knew people who lost more than me, but
Yeah.
I was done. It was over. And I left the company, and they had me, I had to sign all these non-compete clauses. So I couldn't go back and do e-commerce and compete with them. So,
Yeah, they get to those lawyers.
I signed, the day we actually sold the company, the day they bought us, I sat in a room with like 1,000, these lawyers were just giving me one sheet of paper after another. Like, this is the copyright for this, and this is and this is the, and I just sign and sign and sign and sign. So I was signing with my left hand. My hands were cramped. It took all day. I must have signed 1,000 pieces of paper, and I
And
walked away. I
nobody
sat
ever
down. I
said you
was
should get a lawyer of your own to look at them.
We all had lawyers of our own. We each of us needed our own personal lawyers. Then
Yeah,
our
that's what I'm
company
saying.
had lawyers. Their company had lawyers, and since they were a Canadian company with Canadian lawyers, they needed an American law firm to represent them. There were more lawyers. The lawyers made more money than everybody. But
Oh,
I sat down at
well,
that table. I sat down at that table. I probably had a few $100 in my bank account. I walked away from that table, and I was rich on paper, but I was still, kind of technically poor. But
right.
it was over. It was over pretty quick. It was fun for a little bit. I got to taste a little bit, but I had to go back into business. I was making indie movies with my friends and recording albums, but we had to go back into business.
And
So
I bet now, let me ask you, I bet you, because he's the most like technically skilled person I have ever met. And like you were just probably filming these things on regular cameras, am I right? Like
well,
you
we bought
didn't
those, whatever we bought nice cameras at the time, but it was before HD. We made a couple indie movies. I helped three different directors produce them. One of them got into international distribution. It was translated into Russian and German, and we were getting ripped off in China. It was crazy.
no,
But
no comment.
but and that's what the book's about. It's about this
Yeah.
story of how I was this musician living in the crazy college house in Alston doing, fun stuff with my friends, and it became huge business, changed the whole world. And then in the end, I was right back in Alston, right where I started, literally 2 blocks away in a house with my brother. We were starting a band, and we opened up a tattoo shop, called Stingray Body Art. It was one of the
Wait,
first.
coolest shop ever. If you ever
Yeah, it
want
was.
to know a tattoo shop,
It was.
I've been in there. It's a little
That's where we. Yeah,
surprising. Yeah, no,
we
that's
tried to make the.
what
We had a chance to kind of, it was right at the time when tattoos were going from like the back streets to main streets. So we made a real showroom of a shop, and we got a lot of hate from a lot of the other tattoo shops because they were like, "Oh, it's people like you that are ruining the business." But
No, well,
customers, customers want quality. They want service. They want guarantees. They want to be treated well, right? You think about, it's not just
yeah.
bikers and sailors,
Well, you
anymore.
had pretty much.
It's an art form.
I will tell you. The first time I went in to that shop, he had a whole wall full of stuff that they pierced, and swear to God, I didn't know what half of the body parts were. I was like, "What is that? What is that?
Yeah,
Why would Why would you want
I
to
gotta
pierce
tell you,
that?"
I did not. I would stay out of the piercing room.
Yeah, no, no.
you know, but tattooing is a real art form, and
Yeah,
we had 9 tattoo artists working, out of 5 rooms, 2 shifts a day, seven
yeah,
days a week.
yeah.
We were the highest grossing tattoo shop in New England. We had lasers, we had doctors that we partnered with, and nurses on staff. We did laser removal and lightning for cover ups. We helped a lot of domestic abuse victims who had like names tattooed on them that they were
Yeah,
forced to
and
get. We
probably
would cover them up for
jailed.
free.
That's amazing.
We covered them up for free. We had some NGOs. There were a bunch of girls that like got
What's that? I'm
massively
sorry.
burned.
What's an NGO? What's that?
It's those nonprofits that go out into the world. There was a big fire in Nicaragua where all these girls got burned in a school,
Oh,
and
okay,
they had
but
some had been
that's
brought to Boston to get healed. So we
oh,
were doing
okay.
little
Now
tattoos
that
on their
sounds like an idiot for
moms,
asking that.
and we were helping them with permanent makeup, and we got very involved in the community. We kind of discovered civics. You know, I got
So
involved with.
really, you've always been like that since day one, yeah?
Well, everyone in my family, we've always been, about helping people. My parents are doctors, my sister's a
Right.
nurse, my mom's a nurse, my brother's a physical therapist, but when I got involved, we never really noticed what was going on the actual main streets of our community when we
Right.
were in the computer business, because we were flying from LA to Montreal to New York to Boston and everywhere, and we didn't notice it. We just walk right by it. But once I had a shop on Main Street myself, my grandparents had shops and whatnot, but I was a
Right.
kid, and I loved them. But once I owned a shop, we started noticing that there was a whole world out there of local activists and people helping people. And I got involved with the Board of Trade and an organization called Main Streets, which is a great organization. They both are. And I became president of the Board of Trade for 2 terms, and that's the organization that's really the businesses. It's a business organization, and they try to promote just the businesses and help the businesses through some of the stuff that they face, every day. And then Main Streets was started here in Boston by Mayor Menino, and there's 23 neighborhoods in Boston, and they made a main streets in each neighborhood. So we do everything from help businesses navigate the city processes when they're trying to expand their hours or get licenses. We've done hundreds of thousands of dollars in murals where we pay artists to do these beautiful murals. We, have events with
Well, like on
bands
where?
and
Just on the
music.
buildings or in the alleys or
Oh no,
my
all the
daughter did that
all the
in
all the
high
major
school.
murals. When you come to Boston, to Austin, this part of Boston, all the major murals in Austin, like literally 90% of them are done by Main Streets, the organization. I've been president for 13 years. It's kind of hard to believe, but we got a $90,000 grant a year ago that we've been working with Project Place. We pay people that have been made homeless, unfortunately, and they're trying to get their lives back together. So we pay them a living wage. They hope with the graffiti and the garbage and the cleanup and stuff that the city really doesn't give us enough of.
Okay.
And Project Place helps them get housing and clothes and letters of recommendation and regain their lives with dignity.
Okay, and
So,
let me try to make sure that I understand. This is all money raised by you and your neighborhoods and the business. This is not the state of Massachusetts coming in and helping or giving you
well,
grants or
the mayor, the
how's that
mayor's
work?
office, the mayor's office of Boston helps get us some block grants from the federal government and some money from the city and a little bit of money and some money from the state, and they put it together and they give us kind of a baseline budget, and then we
Okay.
raise the rest by getting independent grants, and we have sponsors and supporters and individual donations. The developers in the neighborhood and the landlords, they all contribute. Some of them contribute, a nice chunk of money.
Yeah.
We just $25,000 from the state just for art projects that we can pay
Interesting.
artists. And we paint the electric boxes. We make the neighborhood beautiful. Uh,
Even still now that
yeah,
with all the work
yeah.
that
We have
goes
our we have
on.
our big annual Austin Village Awards coming up next month, where we honor all the activists and in the neighborhood and the organizations, from the food pantries all the way to Lifetime Achievement Awards. It's an amazing thing, and once you get involved, it becomes one of the great joys in your life.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's nothing like giving back, and
Right.
then make add that makes everybody feel better.
Right, but
Yeah.
nothing's easy. And Stingray
No.
Tattoo, it's had a great 20-year run, But with the COVID shutdown and the social distancing, and our rent didn't get any cheaper, our bills didn't get any cheaper. It
Right.
just became impossible, and we shut
Yeah.
it down. We shut it down in 2023. It was very sad, and
Didn't nobody else? I thought somebody else bought it, or did
no, no, we shut it
no?
down. No, I
Well,
wish
nobody
someone
could
could
have
have
kept
bought
it
it.
up to your level, honestly.
I tried moving it. We did everything we could. We did everything we could to keep it going. But it's time had come. Things have a life cycle,
Yeah.
and since then I got involved. I started making virtual reality games. We got the virtual
Oh,
reality sets, and we started doing VR games. But that led me to something even better.
yeah.
Um,
This
with
deserves a big intro because this is total
Yeah,
shift.
because
But
so
but but,
so a
but
couple
are
of
we gonna start
couple of
talking about the Besser room?
Besser,
Is
yep,
that what
Besser
you're
rooms.
reading?
Yeah,
But
it's Besser
well, I'm
rooms.
interested. I did not realize what a medical background you came from, so that was kind of like drilled into your. You know what that takes, and you understand probably more about how the system works
Oh yeah,
than
all my
most people.
cousins.
I did not realize that. So,
Yeah, my whole
Scott,
family.
this is like could sort of a groundbreaking program for people with
Yeah, so
Alzheimer's and dementia, and you mentioned the other day autism,
and
which is
autism. Yeah, there's a fella named Pat Klassen, and he came up with this idea. He had been doing simulations, software for Grumman and stuff like that, and he came up with this. He was asked by someone to help with what they call like an immersion room over where
okay,
they paint walls for the kids and stuff at an autism facility. And he
right,
was like, we could make this whole thing video wall. So we do it's like 3 video walls like with projectors, and we use VR software to put you in that room without any headsets, because seniors that are living in facilities, people with Alzheimer's or dementia, autism, or extreme cases, they're trapped in these facilities for sometimes the rest of their lives, and they
right.
can't
No,
get out. They can't.
but
They're
I
understimulated.
wonder. I don't. I've just I at my age I know like I've told you this before, Scott. Like almost everybody I know my age has at least one parent who has to deal with that.
Oh
Like
yeah, my
what
grandfather went through that.
percentage? No, well, yeah, no, it's awful to watch. But what percentage are they? Like I would imagine. I mean, there's different people react different times, sometimes different ways. Sometimes I see, things where people obviously don't know each other, but sort of adopt each other as like husband and wives, not really remembering anything. But how do you decide, like, who these programs really would help or agitate? I would imagine it vacillates
So
a
we,
little
we
bit.
sell to the facilities. So,
Okay.
places that have these programs,
Okay. So
a
it's
lot
their
of senior
call.
centers also have memory and Alzheimer's, facilities. The autism facilities are generally they're just dedicated to autism.
Yeah,
There's over
and they're much
33,000
younger, right?
there's
Is it kids
there's over 33,000 adult senior living facilities. That doesn't include just nursing homes or day centers. There's
okay,
33,000 senior facilities in the United States. And I mean, it's just growing. It's a straight line going up until there's going to be 90 million people over 65 in the next 20 years. So it's an unbelievable market that's just growing that needs these services. And, they've
right.
been cutting grants, they've been cutting health and human services.
Mhm.
So, things have to change. And our rooms allow a clinician and a patient or multiple patients or them with their friends or their family. They can do things like they can drive. We make these physical props like driving wheels and bicycles
Right,
and touch tables. They can paint on the walls. But you think about a senior that hasn't been out of a building, out of their facility in forever. They can go into one of our
right,
rooms, press a button, and they're driving along on the highway. They're riding a horse on the beach. We got flying
right,
carpets and all kinds of fun stuff that makes them interact. And we got memory programs we're working on for the autism. It's all ages. It ranges from small children through
Yeah.
teens. They have like age groups, just like middle school and high
Yeah,
school.
but
Then there's
there's kids
adults,
that
there's
there's the
workforce.
on the spectrum term, which I never really understand. Like, how do you know when you're on the spectrum or in the spectrum or teetering on the outside? I find that on that, like, in the perspective or on the edges of the
Uh,
spectrum, I find
you
that
know,
very
there
hard to understand. But
the
there's
people
a number.
people dedicate their lives to this, and God bless these people who work in these facilities with these
Right.
people. I can't
Well,
even imagine what that's
Well,
like.
because if an autistic child, oh, and I know people have had them, if they live there all the time, that's different level.
Yeah,
That's
and
next
being
level.
right, and being isolated for such long periods of time, not having interactivity, it affects
Right,
everyone, whether you're
right.
autistic, whether you're a senior, no matter who you are. So these people end up isolated, and their families don't visit them as well as they could.
I
And I have a friend.
know. Isn't that
I have a friend.
awful?
I have a friend who has an autistic son, and when he got to be about 16, he was a big guy, and he would sometimes have a temper tantrum and destroy things and hurt her, and he had to be put in a home just for his
Right.
own protection,
And then you get
but
aged
also
out
so
anyway.
that
You get aged out
so
of the
that
system.
well, he got, it was for his protection, for her protection, but also because he needed the kind of professional support that would let him lead a more normal life, right? These people, there's a whole industry of folks dedicated to this, and like I said, God bless them, So we provide these services and support to the facilities themselves. And anybody, once they walk into one of these Besser rooms, they're
Right.
blown away. They're like, "Oh my God, we got to get one of these!" Like they just it becomes the next thing. And we're in the middle of installing one out in the Midwest. We're working with an autism facility to create a whole curriculum. So it's kind of like a combination of everything I've done up to this point, right? It's like music and art and interactivity. It's virtual reality. It's working with healthcare, helping people, all in this one package. It's really exciting, and it's really gratifying.
So I think my opinion. Do you work with like medical boards? Like, I mean, I feel like this could go so much bigger and in so many directions. I mean, it could even, you could make small ones that people with
Well, we
children
we do.
on the spectrum, like even
Yeah,
ones that have
we
at
work. We
home.
don't really work with the boards so much as the organizations. We won, a couple of gold medals from McKnight's, which is a big organization in that arena, and we get asked to go to these trade shows where all the leading executives and clinicians come to,
Right,
so they can
right,
see that
right.
because you know you need to be able to give the right kinds of treatments to these
Yeah,
people that are
for
you know
sure, for sure. Can you talk a little bit about how your music career has continued, and you don't give up in any way, shape, or form, and you will never, ever.
no,
Like,
music's for
like,
life.
do you?
Music's for life. Music's for
Well,
life.
well, that's what one the big vibe is around this whole podcast is that if you're an artist, if you're born an artist, you can't give it up,
Right.
in one way or another.
My I mean, my mom was an artist, and she passed away when I was young, and I lived for a time with my grandfather, who was an illustrator, and her sister, who was a sculptor. My grandma did, all kinds of crafts, and
No
when my
wonder you're
dad,
so smart. Everyone was a doctor or a brilliant
and when
artist or
when my
something.
when my dad remarried, my stepmom, my mom, she's a nurse, she's a doctor, but her brother is an artist. So, I had surrounded by a lot of art, always made art.
Right.
And one day in fourth grade, a guy came down to our classroom and said, "Anybody who wants to play an instrument, follow me." And I don't know, I just stood up and I just had to follow. I was compelled to follow this guy, and music became my life. It was all I wanted to do was get on stage, play music, sing in a band, play guitar, and I didn't know how, so
Well,
over
somebody
time,
who can do the kind of electrical,
now.
complex things that you do, I bet you learned how to read music pretty fast. I'm just guessing.
Well, yeah, they taught us in school, how to read the music off the page, but that didn't mean we knew how to like play like Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd
Well,
or any of the
now,
bands that we loved. So,
do you play by ear in
uh,
general?
well, I have a musical education, but yeah, you're
Right.
always using your ears.
Yeah.
Everyone,
That's that.
everyone
Yeah.
uses their ears. You have to. You have to listen to. I have a band, and my brother's the drummer, and we're really in sync because hey, we're only 18 months apart, and we've
Right.
been playing together for 20 years now.
And do you play? Do
Our
you
bass
play
player.
like the kind of places that you used to play when you started? Do you play at
Yeah,
the same
yeah, we used
places?
to. Well, the places like the Rathskeller, and clubs like
Oh.
CBGB's, they don't exist anymore. We used to
Yeah, I
play
know. I was gonna say.
CBGB's, the Rat. We used to play the Cat Club. We used to play all Bunratty's, all the great clubs. But now, we play O'Brien's, and now they're going to reopen Great Scott. We play at the Midway. We've played at the Sound Museum, at the Space Center, down in Norwood. And we play at. We're
What
big
was that
supporters of
place? What
Out of
was
the
that
Blue.
place I
We're
went to for a concert in Somerville? What was that called? Do you remember? The I went to a concert. Not and it
Club
wasn't. I
Bohemia, maybe. I'm not sure.
right.
We do shows at Out of the Blue Gallery, at
Okay.
the Armory building, and the Middle East. The guys who own the Middle
Yeah.
East started that, and they were big patrons of the art. Joseph, who just recently passed away, and the art galleries. They're all gone now. They used to be art galleries. In the neighborhoods, you could buy art. Now,
But
Out of the Blue Gallery is one of the last ones left. It's run by an amazing woman named Parma, and they're in the Armory building, which is now an arts building.
and
It's
where exactly is that? Where exactly is that?
like Highland Avenue, I think it is. It used to be the Armory in Somerville, so it's just
Okay.
outside Boston, just a couple miles. Ralph's in Worcester and the Lucky Dog. We play all over. And we're not trying to get signed anymore. So at this
No.
point, lives, we just play whatever we want. We
Right.
want to play.
Right.
We write whatever songs we want. We put out whatever music we want. We play whatever the hell we want. And you don't like it, too bad. If you love it,
That
come down and have a good time.
that leads to a
It's
very
very free.
That to lead what's lead to a very good point. And one of the reasons that I like this whole thing is because again now these kids are knocked out of machines one after another, but there's still a group that of them that you'll find that they're not chasing something else. They don't change their music. They don't change their style. They don't change the way they look, and they just keep on going and doing their things. I'm sure they work full time, but it's
Human,
like
humans
it's
are humans are inherently creative. We all have
yeah,
something to say. And
yeah,
some people find it through the written word. Some people find it through visuals. Some people
right,
find it through music. And
yeah.
you gotta always encourage it. You gotta always listen to the new music coming out. You can't just
That's what
become
I
a
think.
dinosaur.
That's what I
So,
think. And
and I've been teaching adults how to play guitar, acoustic guitar, over at the Jackson Man Community Center, which is, our community center in this area of Boston, where, Boston has a lot of great community centers, but some reason in
and
Austin,
Boston
we're,
is so
we're
musically oriented because of the basic brilliant music institutions that we
right,
have here. Never
yeah,
mind
but
that, frankly, Boston is very cultured.
well, even today there's schools of rock, and my friends opened a
Oh
place called
yeah, they're like a
Bach the Rock.
franchise, right?
Right, but now
Mm,
kids can go learn to play guitar and learn how to play popular music. We didn't have that when I was a kid, right? That didn't
no,
exist. You took
no,
you took private lessons, from a guy who played trombone.
right.
But
Yeah.
so
Ooh.
the community center has got me. I'm a private contractor through the city of Boston, and I teach guitar to it's actually adults, 16 and up.
Okay.
Some of the folks are in their 50s and whatnot, but we get them strumming and learning that they have a voice, that they can play music. And they're doing amazing. It's amazingly
Right.
well. if you take the time and show them how to get the sound and how to, it's not that hard. It's not that hard.
Right.
Humans make music, right? We've been
Right.
doing it since the ancient times, of just drumming to send signals across.
Right.
Humans are built to make music. It speaks to our souls. It comes out of us.
Yeah.
Even
No, I think
the
so.
littlest kids, la, 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 it's natural.
Well,
I used to have this teacher. He was I studied when I wanted to learn to sing. I took vocal lessons from Dominique Eade, who is a teacher, amazing jazz vocalist at the conservatory. But I also took lessons from this old guy named Dante Pavone. He was an opera singer. He's gone now, but he was Steven Tyler's singer when he was young. And Dante told me, he said, the first thing that happened when you were born is you started breathing and squealing. Like, you know how to sing. It's
that,
natural.
that's funny.
I never forgot that. Like
That
it's
is
just
funny.
natural.
That is funny.
It's one of those great,
Do you
great
ever
quotes.
like keep an eye? I used to live in the South Shore of Massachusetts, and all those Aerosmith guys live in Marshfield. They all live in Marshfield. And
Yeah,
you
yeah.
used to, I mean, that's about as suburban of
Nicest,
far away
they're the
from that.
nicest, they're the nicest guys you'd ever hope to meet, and we were so lucky to work with them and work for them. They were just always. We would show them drawings of stuff. They asked us to do their exhibit for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We designed this tour, but they were over the moon. They loved it. And they're always about. That's one thing about Aerosmith is they
Right.
always want to be on the cutting edge. They're always interested in the latest thing. I mean, they have
But
first have.
they're that what I started to say about their lives in Marshfield, because I know some people that work with them there but not on music, and you see Steven Tyler at Barnes and
Well,
Nobles having a coffee.
we got to get him in
Well,
the movie. He's in the book.
well,
Right? He's in my book, so they're all in my
well,
book.
yeah, they're reachable actually,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
they just sit there like regular people. Guess what? People in the rich
yeah.
suburbs
Well,
of
Joe,
Boston don't care, and then as you know, I live in
oh no,
Providence,
the
and nobody
people
cares.
care. People care. They came and they did a little show outside their old apartment right on Com Ave, and there were thousands of people on the street.
Yeah, but ComAv is
People love their
different than, you
people
know
love
what
their
I'm saying? It's
Aerosmith.
different than the suburbs. Like, where I live
Well,
in Providence,
you know what? Well, then
like, it's
that's
just,
sad. I think
no, it's
yeah.
not sad. It's great for them to have people leave them alone. Because that
Yeah.
is a terrible life. If you have people out like chasing after you all the time, and I want to take your picture, and
Oh yeah, to be treated like a normal person for folks
that's
to live in
huge.
that kind of bubble is huge. It is huge.
Well,
And
yeah,
that's what we found, like when we first worked with them and I had the chance to be in the studio with them when they were making Nine Lives. We were just hanging out, talking about past life regression or whatever, just like having great conversations. People who love music and love what they do, and they know that they've been blessed. They do.
right.
And like I said, these are some of the nicest people. The folks at the agency, Mark Geiger and Bill Elson and all of them. These were amazing people, and I tried to really capture that in the book. It's like how these people
Yeah,
were, they had had mentors, they had people who believed in them, and it gave them
right.
chances and opportunities, and to them, there was this, pay it forward mentality,
Yeah.
and as ugly as people talk about the music business being, the people in the music business are often some of the nicest people. It's an ugly business, but
Yeah.
but at the
Now,
same
well,
time,
now it's different.
it's full of amazing people, and
Well,
capturing
fortunately,
that.
there's now a whole, like, as in the entertainment business, everybody's going like, okay, hold on, hold up. Like, let's bring the real stuff back. I think it's going to be a
Right.
long,
And
long fight.
I tried to really capture that in the book by
Yeah.
I wrote it in first person present tense. So instead of saying,
Yeah.
and then I went here and then I went there, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm sitting in Bill Elson's office and
Right.
there's a million gold records on the wall. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here with the guy who was the Doors' agent. This guy
Yeah.
represented Plant and Page, and he's talking about Janis Joplin like she's in the next room, and Jimi Hendrix, and
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
he would teach, and he wanted to teach, he wanted to share his knowledge. What an amazing thing. So I really try to get that story in the book. We came up, we did the whole trip. We started, world exploded in front of us. We reached the highest of the highs. We got brought to the bottom. And you see these movies about Zuckerberg and Facebook, or Amazon, and they idolize these massively rich people. But I wanted to tell the real story of what happened to so many of us,
Well,
you know, in
but
in
that's
that
the
age.
interesting story. No, I think we're a little.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't
yeah,
know. I mean, maybe I shouldn't express this personal opinion, but
you know,
I am tired of like these sort of like build them up and like they never go down, and it all, that they all
yeah. So
don't seem like
and
very
I read other.
impactful.
And I read some of the autobiographies that other people have written, and that whole I went here and I did that got boring. So I was like, let me make this exciting.
Well, because you have
Let's
done things
put
with
you right
exciting
there. Let's
things.
make you feel like you're right there, first person, like you're
Well,
living it.
yeah, but you again, I told you, you like don't give yourself enough credit because nobody can do what you do at the pace that you do. And oh, by the way, I just wrote a book and I just wrote a breakthrough, computer program that's going to change the medical
Well,
world.
yeah. I mean, I
Oh,
just read a
and I
book.
still
That
play
was
clubs and I play archery and I want to run my town. Gee, I wonder why I'm a little tired every once in a while.
yeah. Well, it was 5 years to write that book, and a lot of
Well,
rewrites. And I got to
well,
thank
it's very
everybody.
long, Scott.
Well, it was the first draft, and I got to thank everybody who worked with us at Stump World, because they did
Yeah.
interviews, they had stories, and reminded me of things that even I'd forgotten.
Oh,
And at Main Streets, like, I may be the president of a board, but we got 13 people on our board. We got like 100 volunteers that are on our committees and do our events. The trick is to surround yourself with other like-minded people that are
yeah.
doing great things.
Yeah. And who
Nothing
are
happens overnight.
normal, who treat the world like,
Right.
again,
Nothing happens
treat what people.
overnight. Our success story with Stump World was 10 years of building that company. Nothing. Stingray, that was a 20-year trip. The time
Yeah.
starts, time
But
goes
you,
by.
but,
What's they say? Never give up, never surrender. It's just, you got
no,
to keep on
but I
trucking.
think I think that's also like music. It's kind of like part of the basic nature. It's like okay, if something great happens, great, and if it screws up, then you put your
Right.
big girl pants or big boy pants back on, and you go, okay, what's next? You know?
There's no success without failure.
No,
You have to try things. Sometimes they don't work. No, what is it like Flea, the bass player from the Chili Peppers? He's putting out a jazz album. He's a trumpet player, and he credits part of the bravery he has to do that to Neil Young, saying, "There's no success without failure, dude. Like, you have to risk it. You have to
yeah.
risk it.
But
You can't
I
play it
love
safe."
what David Byrne is doing now, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they're my generation, and now David Byrne is like out doing his own random thing. I saw him a concert. I was married, so that was
yeah,
a little while ago. But it wasn't all the old Talking Head stuff. It was just
yeah.
he's got his new stuff that he
No,
just
he's
does,
he's
and
he's amazing. I
well,
was in San
a
Francisco.
character.
I was in San Francisco for work, and all these cool looking people were sort of heading in one direction. I was like, "What? I don't know anyone out
Well,
there." So
you
I
kind of can't
followed
miss
them.
him. It's you
So
can't. He can't
I,
hide.
I followed all these people, and they would go into this theater, and David Byrne was playing there, and I went in. I had an amazing time. I made all these friends. But people
Me
like
too.
that, just
That audience is a cool audience, and
yeah,
I just it wasn't that many decades ago that I saw him,
yeah,
but he was doing his own
all right.
thing, and it was kind of a really nice theater.
Yeah.
So
So, like,
um,
you just gotta keep on trucking, and
yeah, well, that's
one foot in front of the other, and never stop dreaming, never stop believing.
no, and Scott, and the rumors are swirling all around the entertainment industry because I hear stuff. Scott. And I think you're going to move on from now you're changing the medical world. And I think you're going to have a real impact in the entertainment industry in general. You've worked
Thank,
it, you've done it, but your story's way bigger. And you're way
thank you.
smarter than just a
I'm
little.
really looking forward to seeing this on the silver screen. I don't want
Yeah,
to just self-publish.
but
I don't want to just self-publish some book that nobody reads. I want to
no.
bring it. I want to bring that experience to people. So,
Well, yeah, but you know what? My advice for you is the way you approach everything else. Do it on your terms. You know,
uh, yes.
do it on your terms and do it. Don't let anybody convince you to do it otherwise. You know.
Well, thank you,
Um,
and I appreciate that, and I really want to thank you for having me on your
no, thank
podcast.
you very much. And I was.
And I love your rug there that you're wearing.
I did. Well, honestly, I was wearing it, or because I wear it around the house a lot because I'm cheap and I keep my house very cold. So, I'm always looking for something because
Yeah.
honest to God, this is from a gas station in South Carolina. And then I was there. I bought one. It was like $20. And then the next time I was down there, I saw one in another gas station. Why they sell these at many gas stations in South Carolina, I cannot explain to you.
I don't know. I've got one from Mexico. If I'd have known, I would have worn mine. So
Well,
we'll
yeah,
have
but
to
I
do
know,
this again.
a lot of your
We'll have to do
book
this again
has
soon.
a lot of your book has pot smoking referrals. So I was like, you know what, I can keep it on if I'm talking to him. So
There you go.
I thought it was thematic.
So
All
long live
right.
Stump World. Long live Stump
Yay.
World.
Okay, Stump World
Right.
and on with just you're so freaking cool, Scott. I can.
Well, thank you, Melanie.
Okay.
So
Thank
are
you.
you.
Okay. Okay. I'm not turning off this fucking
Cut.
machine. Yeah, I know. Yeah, cut. I'm not turning off this. I'm not touching this. Lorenzo.
Get your guy. You got to get your guy and make him do it.
Well, I think I know how to do it, but the fear of God was putting me. I don't think I pressed anything because I'm terrorized.